Hey everybody, how is it going? It is November 15th, 2023. This is the RambleCast. I'm Cody Toombs, and with me I have a Corbin Davenport. So, how's everyone doing? This has been one of those weeks. Um it just leaves you, yeah, a very big change of pace after last week. Yeah. Um So, weird little things are happening, things that make you question companies' ability to, make money. Like, oh, I don't know, canceling a multi-million-dollar movie starring John Cena, or, um, well, basically anything Warner Brothers Discovery does. Like, none of it is smart ever. But anyway, hello to Rigo. How's it going? Um, just to quickly mention this for those who may not already be familiar, game streams typically happen on weekends. During Wednesdays I usually do a tech podcast. That's what you're watching right now. But of course, welcome to join and hang out. So, not sure that would work, but okay. Uh, really? Um, oh, that's weird. Hold on, let me see if I can. Why on earth would that not be working? Did the Jitsi audio capture get... Uh, let's try switching. Okay, say something. Okay, no, that didn't work either. Why did it switch to the wrong... Ah, that's what it... Stupid Jitsi. Okay, you're on. I see the dog barking.
Yeah,
As a thing.
great. Okay. Well, that was fun. All right, so I'm gonna say all that again. While the dog is barking again. So, back in January, Qualcomm revealed the Snapdragon satellite. Uh, I guess his software, which the goal of that was to bring, I believe, two-way satellite texting to Android phones. So that was kind of impressive after Apple had just announced the iPhone 14, which had emergency satellite, but only for like emergency context. Like you would use it when you're like stuck in a ditch in the middle of the forest and that kind of thing. Or you can also use it to update your location on Find My, which I did do a couple weeks ago. I was in one spot with absolutely no cell signal, so I was like, "That's a great time to try this out," and it worked. It's kind of cool. So anyway, Qualcomm was planning something like that, but better, and they were using satellites from another company called Iridium, And for whatever reason, that partnership has just completely fallen through. Um, it sounded like the technology was done, but they couldn't find a buyer. Is what it sounded like. So part of the thing, and I think I feel like I talked about this when it was first announced, so it might have been here. Part of the issue with Qualcomm's solution is that it was basically like middleware. So first you need the satellites, which are owned by Iridium, so that's one company. That part is talking to a software component, and presumably some hardware is some specialized hardware might be required for this, which would be Qualcomm. And then it sounded like on top of that, like if I'm Samsung and I'm trying to build a phone with this feature, I would have to build like some integrations on top of that to make this like a thing you can use on the phone. So I think I said here at the time that like this is kind of a complex solution and I don't know who's going to go for this. It turns out no one. So and Qualcomm did tell CNBC that the partnership fell through because smartphone vendors, quote, indicated a preference towards standard-based solutions, quote. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
There's, as far as I'm aware, there's not like a GSM equivalent for this stuff yet. There's a bunch of different solutions. Apple is using satellite system from another company. I forget the exact name of it. T-Mobile is working with Starlink. Starlink is supposed to start deploying their new generation of low Earth orbit satellites. Apple also uses low Earth satellites, but from someone else, which are supposed to be able to use like normal smartphone hardware. Like it doesn't require specialized hardware. I'm sure there's still some like low level software that needs to be added for that. So like I don't think I don't think there's like a standard for this yet. And it's not clear like if that would be better. I don't know.
So yeah, it technologically speaking, I'm pretty sure there's just no standard, and there's probably not going to be. I mean, someday there will be, but like in the immediate future, there's no sign that anyone is collaborating. There, as far as I've heard, there just haven't been any announcements of any consortium of companies sticking together and saying, all right, we're going to develop something that is like GSM or kind of like the LTE of satellite communication, or sorry, low Earth satellite communication. Like there's nothing like that yet, seemingly. And I don't know how easy it would be to get something going like that, because most of the companies involved have kind of got a history of not really wanting to work with each other unless they acquire them.
Yeah, all the satellites are pretty different. And I guess maybe what the standards version of this would be like Google talking to all of the
Welcome back.
Jitsi just kicked me out for no reason.
Jeez, of course it did.
Thing to use, but
this thing is getting buggier and buggier.
So what was I saying? Oh yeah, I guess maybe what the standards version of this would be Google figuring out like a framework for all of these to plug into an Android, just like cell networks do. It seemed like they were kind of working on that for Android 14, but it's not clearly if anyone using that. But
I wonder how much of this is something Google can really work out versus something that the hardware vendors need to work out. And because it seems like most of this, like from the perspective of software, like higher end software, none of this factors in. Google's involvement as the OS developer, they're going to definitely have some input here, but I don't know how much they really need to solve in this. It feels like this is something that very likely Qualcomm, MediaTek, Apple, these are the companies that are probably going to have to sort of sort this out between themselves and the satellite companies. I'm guessing.
Diablo said carriers giving up like RCS. I mean, the carriers really aren't in this equation at all. It's the satellite companies. Well, the one thing we have seen is T-Mobile trying to work with Starlink, but Starlink's already said that their thing will be like a service that they will offer to a lot of carriers. So it's not even like a T-Mobile exclusive thing. Maybe in the US it will be. I don't know if like AT&T or Verizon care, but like this is something that's like it's. I don't think it's really something that changes on a per carrier basis. It's just like what are the satellites used for communication? Do you need special antennas in the phone? What firmware do those antennas need? That's kind of it. And then obviously like the layer Qualcomm was building, which is like the part where like you build the apps that can interact with that hardware and maybe like, you know, billing and stuff like that.
Yeah, Qualcomm was trying to own a larger stake in this equation, but for some reason they were also trying to sell it, which not like sell a stake in the company or anything, but they were trying to sell the technology and sort of like licensing deals and couldn't come up with something.
Right. So but, yes. Like if I'm Samsung, I just go to Qualcomm instead of going to the satellite company myself and made another company to build the software parts on top.
Though I bet they still would have had to go to the satellite company too. This, I imagine, I guess I could be misunderstanding this, but I'm pretty sure in this situation, Qualcomm was basically again trying to make the modem effectively. Like what Qualcomm has been doing for ages is make the hardware that does the communication with it, in sort of parallel. It's what they've already done with like cellular communication. Qualcomm made the modem that talks to the cell towers, and then they sell that to companies to build into their phones. They're just trying to do the same thing here with the satellites, but instead of making something that can work with several different kinds of towers, as long as they're talking in a universal language, they're trying to work with one satellite company to make a modem for their satellites. And it seems though that they were trying to take a little bit more involvement in the business. Like I think they were trying to get a kickback out of Iridium too, or at least like take some of the money that would have been made in the enduring deals. I don't know.
And Iridium's still like they already make, I don't know if consumer is the right word because it's very niche, but like you can buy like one of their satellite hotspot things. It's very expensive and has a very expensive subscription, but then you can use their network for like texting, and I think you can like load web pages. It's just extremely slow.
Yeah, ever since the name Iridium came back up, I've been trying to remember what is it that I used to know them for. The name popped up like, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, maybe 15. And it was one of those companies that you heard their name a lot for like 6 months to a year. And then they just sort of vanished. And part of me wants to think satellite radio, but I don't think that's what it was. Yeah, I suppose a Wikipedia lookup would answer this pretty quickly. Iridium Communications. They have a system of 75 satellites, 66 are active, and the remaining 9 function as in-orbit spares. Nice. Okay, I know that this makes for super exciting reading. Oh, hey, they filed Chapter 11 back in 1999. Wait, what? They launched their service in 98, filed for bankruptcy in 99. Oof.
Fantastic.
What was
Yeah,
that?
it sounds like they've got a mix of like the higher orbit stuff that's useless for everything except like phone calls, and then I assume the stuff that Qualcomm would have used would be like the ones that are closer to low Earth orbit, because that's the only reason that like
A phone can reach him.
Starlink and stuff works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and phone reaching. Anyway,
Okay.
Diablo said Qualcomm and Starlink might be in talks now. I mean, if it sounds like Starlink doesn't need Qualcomm in that equation, it sounds like they were just going directly to carriers. But I don't know.
But carriers need somebody to develop that hardware. Not to say carriers can't develop that hardware, but honestly, they don't.
Well, T-Mobile was pitching it at the time that like unmodified phones would be able to use it, but
Yeah.
that was talk, and it was also talk while Elon Musk was standing next to the T-Mobile guy. So who knows? Who knows? But
The drugs flowed freely that day.
yeah. So while that's going on, Apple also made an announcement. Is it today? Yeah, today, where they are extending their emergency SOS feature for iPhone 14 for another year. So what happened last year when the iPhone 14 series was announced, which was the first iPhones with their satellite SOS, was they said the service would be free when you buy an iPhone for 2 years after that. And then after that, they will start to charge some amount of money. And they've now extended that a year. So if you already have an iPhone 14, they're just adding another year to the end of that. So basically the main takeaway from this is that we're still pretty far from the point where theoretically anyone would be charged for this, because the oldest iPhone 14 owners now have had their phone for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got another 2 years now. Again, like it starts when you like set up the iPhone. So at a minimum from now, it's like 2 years. And kind of the interesting part of this to me is that it's sort of Apple kicking the can down the road for how this will be priced, because I'm they know as well as I do that they're getting amazing publicity from this feature. Like every single month there's some news story about someone who got stuck in a ditch, or there's like a natural disaster, or their car stopped in the middle of nowhere, and they might not have lived if they couldn't like contact emergency services through this feature. So that becomes a very different takeaway when it's like, okay, this thing that can save my life, oh wait, I didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
So there's a thing there where it's like, if you use it and you're not, will it be a subscription? Will it be like a device unlock and you get it forever? If you're not paying for it and you need it, will Apple just like charge your card afterwards? Not really clear, and Apple is just not going to answer that question for a while longer. It's going to be interesting for sure. Oh, Austin is here. Hello.
And yes, hello to Diablo, Carson, and Austin. Yeah, so for what it's worth, I think this is what most people, well, maybe not most, but this is what a lot of people were predicting. That Apple would just kind of wait until a certain point and then just say, yeah, we're not quite there yet. We don't want to start charging. So here's a little bit more for free. Now, whether that's continues, we don't know, but I think it's safe to assume that we're probably going to see this. I don't think we're going to see Apple start charging people for this at least until this cycle is over.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Well, now it's 3 years from when the iPhone 14 was announced. So the first people who bought the iPhone 14, that period will end 2 years from now.
Yeah.
About. I don't know exactly when the iPhone 14 started shipping to people, but it was around this time last year.
Yeah, it's give or take a week or so, whatever. But yeah, this is definitely, that's exactly it. We're just going to see they're, I don't think they're just kicking the can down the road. I think they are doing this sort of for a PR win. And very possibly they might have done this because they know that the Qualcomm deal just flopped. So they can ride this good news a little bit longer. It leaves the obvious question, how much is it costing them for this? But if the advertising is good, I'm sure they're going to keep riding it, because why wouldn't they? It's just another one of those reasons.
Cody.
Huh?
The investors, Cody. The investors would love more subscription revenue.
Yes, they would.
Also, Tim probably would.
Though, the thing that, I mean, like you said, people are going to be, or people have been asking, how much is this subscription going to be? How's it going to work? Well, the question in my mind is, how many people are going to see that and go, I never go anywhere that doesn't have cell service? And I feel like that's going to be such a high number that there aren't going to be that many people subscribing to this. And even the ones who do see it and say, well, I even spend half of my day in dead zones, I still don't care. I'm not going to pay extra so I can have this thing that I didn't use before and I'm not about to use now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. They've definitely been working to like make this more useful, or and useful in more situations that isn't just like I'm about to die. Like when the iPhone 15 was announced, they rolled out roadside assistance, which like forwards you to like people from AAA if your like car gets stuck in your middle of nowhere with no cell service. I guess maybe there's room for a couple more features like that. So I guess maybe that's what they're building towards. They're trying to make this a little bit useful in more situations than just like, I'm in the forest.
Yeah.
Or in my case, when I tried it, I was just in Ohio.
I mean, that is a good reason to be scared.
That is an emergency.
Yeah.
You don't want
you need help. ASAP,
yeah.
Get me out of this zone.
It was very cool. I held my phone up and it was connected in like, I think it was like 5 to 10 seconds. It sent my location. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I'm curious how that will work out and what the monetization will be, because it does cost a lot to run all of that. I forget. I wrote an article about the satellite, because obviously these aren't like Apple's not launching the satellites just yet. Maybe they'll get to that point. But where did I write about it? Okay, here we go. This is an article I wrote last year. It was Apple is using Global Star Inc. They're using their satellites, which are in low Earth orbit, just like Starlink. And Global Star had to publish an investor's notice or something when this was announced, because they're a publicly traded company. And they said in that message that it had Global Star had 24 ground stations covering about 80% of the Earth's surface. Apple at the time provided them with $450 million for network upgrades. And the Form 8K they had to file with the SEC said that Global Star allocated 85% of its current and future network capacity exclusively for Apple. So Apple is paying for a big chunk of an entire satellite network to make this work. So I don't know how long they want. Obviously, like of course they can do it for as long as they want because they're worth like $1 trillion. But that's not how tech companies like to operate. So I would
Yeah,
imagine at some point this becomes a ideally like a device unlock. Like you buy your iPhone and then you pay like $50 once or something to just unlock this for forever. But I don't know. I don't know if it would be 50. I don't know what the monetization for this would look like at all because no one's really done it outside of those devices from like Iridium and stuff where it's like absurdly expensive, but that also is a lot more flexible.
what do you want to bet the reason they just extended the year for iPhone 14 users is because the roadmap for Global Star, they're not going to hit it. Like maybe they were looking at it going, okay, in 2 years, we can have a system that's going to work a certain way. And that certain way, let's say hypothetically, is every phone is just automatically enabled to communicate with it. And once your subscription runs out, you have to pay per message. Let's just say it's a per message thing. This requires some extra data to be sent. It requires certain behaviors to function, probably some changes in protocol. What do you want to bet Global Star started work on this and is just like, yeah, we need more time. And Apple's like, you know what? All right, we'll we will solve that in the best way we know how. We'll get free great publicity.
Yeah, maybe. I know basically how it works right now is that the way all of this is set up is so that it basically doesn't have to transfer any information over the satellite except like where you are and like what exactly is wrong with you. So like also how this like I was trying this out with the Find My thing, and so it's a thing where if you have no cell service at all, you can go into the Find My app and press a button, and it will send your location over basically to Apple's servers, so it updates your little location on you. But that only works for the people you're already sharing your location with.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't like download a list of the people you know and like hit that button. And it's the same thing um, with the emergency health stuff. Like if I fall in a ditch, my leg is broken. Um, it's it's going to basically Apple will pull the health. My understanding is that Apple pulls the health profile information from like your Apple account. So it's not like sending your height, whatever else about you like at the time over the satellite. I'm pretty sure. But there's a bunch of stuff like that. So the capacity probably isn't as much of an issue as it might be with like what Starlink wants to do. But also, Apple sells a lot of iPhones,
Yes.
and so now they've had the iPhone 14 on the market for a year. So it's a lot of people who bought that phone. By most metrics, I believe the iPhone 15 series is selling well. So the number of people with one of these Apple SOS enabled phones is growing. So that's going to be more capacity. But I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, we're obviously going to have, it's the typical we'll wait and see kind of thing. At this stage, I can't help but wonder if Android's ever really going to catch up on this until somebody big enough, and weirdly, I think that's going to have to end up being Google and Qualcomm, until the two of them get together and work out something that makes it literally a package that every company can just realistically sort of pay a licensing fee and access. Apple's got this kind of worked out and sorted. It's something that just no one in Android seems to have a close approach to. Though it does also raise a question. I wonder if Samsung's maybe working on something behind the scenes and just nobody knows. If there's any company that can do
Yeah,
that, it's them.
maybe. Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Apple and why it's taking Android so long is because Apple uh, put in all of the money and resources, and they're very good at like obfuscating the complexities of this stuff. Like I just press a button on my phone and it goes through whatever satellites in space are required, and when you do the emergency thing, Apple and Global Star have all these data centers all over the place with actual humans at them that forwarding your stuff. So it is a lot to like build up for this.
You say that, but
And
they also went with the absolute most bare bones version of this technology, where you have to stand out there, hold your phone at like specific orientation so that a satellite can pick up the smallest amount of data possible. Whereas what Iridium and Qualcomm were aiming for was literally like uh it basically very slow 2G service. I mean,
yeah,
even that's a bit of an exaggeration. That's better than what they were offering,
although
but I mean, it
yeah,
would have actually been real data service as opposed to Apple's, message in a bottle.
yeah. I mean, I would hope maybe Apple can get there at some point. The cool thing also with with Apple's satellite thing is that like you don't necessarily need to like hold your iPhone for it to go. I was watching a video where someone was testing this as like, hey, if you get in like a car wreck in the middle of nowhere and you're just unconscious, like what's your iPhone gonna do? And it will just send it when there's a satellite passing overhead. It's just the pointing, like, gets that done quicker. You're
Right.
not waiting for the next, pass or whatever. So,
Yeah. Urgently
but yeah, like
urgent
it is.
messaging. It obviously you
Yeah,
do that to help yourself, but uh yeah, it's still not really the same. It I mean, point is you've got one company that's trying to do sort of the minimum and can do it a little bit better in some
yeah.
instances versus a company that's or versus other companies or other technologies that are like, yeah, no, we want to just leapfrog that entirely. We don't want to stop just at
Well,
sending text messages.
yeah, they're doing effectively the minimum, but also they're the only one who has this in a phone.
Yeah.
So Qualcomm has nothing to show at this moment. Carson linked the T-Mobile announcement from last year where they were talking about this, and yeah, we talked about that earlier. That's the SpaceX Starlink thing that is not deployed yet because this needs Starlink's newer satellites, and most of those have been delayed because I believe SpaceX was trying to launch them on a the new Starship, the really big ship that SpaceX has, and they can't launch that right now because the last time they did it, it blew up and scattered debris across like half of Texas. So that's on hold.
Oh, all I can for anyone who gets it, Starship Titanic. Um,
So yeah, and that's also the thing that Starlink said that there was a newer I think it was an article or a press release or something where Starlink said they're gonna try to have that up by next year, and that will be a thing that they offer to more than just T-Mobile. Um, but who knows if other carriers in the U.S. will be interested in that? We'll see.
I imagine this is something where T-Mobile will, in those circumstances, will get like a 1 year or even 6 month exclusivity deal, and then it'll just start getting shopped out to everybody else.
Very, very possibly.
Yeah. Uh, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they'll get a cost break. Who knows? Regardless, I still keep coming back to I don't see how T-Mobile does this without paying somebody else to get involved for hardware manufacturing. Unless I guess SpaceX could be doing that, but that would still involve putting a discrete component inside the phone, which I mean, phones are already a little on the tight side. So,
I mean, they said in this press release the vast majority of smartphones already on T-Mobile's network be compatible with the new service using the device's existing radio.
I'm gonna
So they're just
I'm gonna be skeptical
yeah. I
on
mean,
that.
yeah. I mean, it's 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 real when it's work.
Yeah. But yeah, you never know. I suppose that's certainly a possibility. Anyway, so shall we talk about AI?
Um,
The
I
perpetual
guess I
punishment.
can talk.
Shall we talk about AI?
Yeah.
Or do you just
Why
want to
not?
go?
Why don't you talk about the background thing, and then I can talk about the Copilot thing because I just wrote about that.
Oh,
And
okay.
you talk while I get water.
So it just hit today, and sorry, I forget who brought it up. I guess it's easy enough for me to just scroll up a couple pages. It looks like Nils. Thank you, Nils, for posting the links to this. Microsoft has been doing a whole big AI push today, basically announcing some of their new, sometimes goofy, sometimes gimmicky features. And apparently the thing that they, or one of the things that they are working on is automatic, like, cleanup of your background. And when I say cleanup, that's not really what it is. It's more take your background and inspire a new background from it. Um, at least that's kind of how it looks. Their sample, or their examples GIF basically just shows people sitting in rooms where the entire background kind of gets reimagined with less stuff and prettier stuff. One thing that stands out to me, I don't know how many people notice this, but all but one of these are Christmas themed. The 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 guy sitting there, his background turns into like Christmas presents and a tree, whereas prior to that it definitely was none of those things. The next girl, her window gets covered in fairy lights or twinkle lights, whatever. And then the next one is this girl who's just sitting in a perfectly decent looking office space or whatever it is, and that one just gets changed to a slightly different looking room. I don't know, with I guess a little bit less junk in the background. Yeah. Uh but yeah, I don't know. This may be one of the weirdest novelty features that has been shown off. Like, I kind of get the use of background blur. I don't actually like it. I think it generally doesn't work for a lot of situations, but in this scenario, I get it, you know. But I don't know. I just wonder if this is uh really doing that much, or if it's just kind of another gimmick to sort of highlight, yeah, we can do AI. Look at our AI stuff.
I have no opinion on this.
Oh, okay. I thought there'd be more. All right. Well, in that case, let's talk about Copilot.
Okay. I'm responding to my mom.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so Microsoft, yeah, then that AA thing was part of Microsoft's Intune event today, and they talked about a lot of stuff. And part of that was this Microsoft Copilot thing. So, for anyone not in the loop about this, Copilot is kind of what Microsoft is calling like all of its like Chat GPT based generative AI stuff. That's just like there's a Microsoft 365 Copilot that is in like Word and Excel and Outlook and stuff. That's still limited to like corporate customers, and it's like an extra thing, so it's not a whole lot of people using that right now. There's also GitHub Copilot, which is the thing that like helps you write code or whatever. It's in VS Code. Um, so now they have released a Microsoft Copilot web app, which was called Bing Chat Enterprise before. Basically, this is from a functional standpoint, this is literally just Bing Chat. but
Mm-hmm.
it's not as connected to Bing. So it will give you the same answers, and like the UI is identical, except that like it's not in the Bing website. There's not like Bing, links at the top. And for me, the biggest change is that when you're using Bing Chat, if you scroll too far, it would like try to like scroll you to the Bing search results for whatever you type, which is not helpful. This does not do that at all, so it's immediately better. Um,
And vice
so
versa, if you were in a Bing search, trying to scroll up would automatically trigger you into the chat interface, which was also
yeah,
highly frustrating if you
I don't know who
actually
came
use
up
Bing.
with that. That's really bad UX, but yeah. So the new web app is slightly better. Again, works exactly the same as Bing Chat and the little sidebar in Microsoft Edge, which actually I believe uh, got rebranded to Copilot. So that's just like making this all kind of the same thing. Bing Chat still exists. There's a few uh, headlines that were sort of saying like Bing Chat is being completely rebranded to Microsoft Copilot. My understanding is that's not the case. It's just like in the blog. I just had the blog post open from Microsoft that was explaining this, but they said that Bing Chat will continue to be an option. So that's just gonna keep living in the Bing website. There, it's in the chat now. And basically, the reason why this exists beyond just like detaching it from Bing a little bit is that when you are a like, if I'm working at a company that is paying for Microsoft's cloud services, this is the thing you use. You don't use Bing Chat. You use this thing because this was the thing that has additional corporate protections. That's like supposed to like definitely not leak anything you put in it. Um, Companies can also like customize this a little bit depending on what they're doing. So basically, this is just like the corporate version that already existed and like worked very slightly different. Is now just a thing normal people can access as well instead of going to the horrific Bing website that doesn't work. So there you go. And also the fun part is that it seems to have the same like browser restrictions as Bing Chat because Microsoft is still doing that. So it seemed to load okay for me in Google Chrome. Uh, it loads fine in Microsoft Edge. It straight up refused to load for me in Safari, which is annoying because I wanted to put it in Safari so I could add it to my dock, because you can do that in Mac OS now, and it looks like a nice, pretty web app. But they're still blocking that, so that's cool. And there's again no reason to do that. All of this is cloud based. It's not doing anything special in the web browser. It's just a chat website.
Yeah. Rebranding wise, or rather co-branding, I'm not really sure what to call it when you're technically just taking the thing you already had, launching it under slightly different naming, not really removing the old thing or rebranding it entirely. Yeah, I don't know what to call that. But anyway, all in all, in a weird way, I think Microsoft made this more complicated than it needed to be, but they actually moved it to what it should have been from the start. So this is the right move. They just did it in a very confusing way, or rather unnecessarily complicated way. That being said, I think they also need. Well, I like the name Copilot. I actually think the name Copilot's good. I just kind of wish that they had come up with a less Microsofty way of using the name all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, it's that typical thing of what is it called? What are they calling the new thing? Copilot with, or sorry, Copilot for Microsoft 365. Like, that is such a Microsoft name, and it's just
Very silly.
it's unnecessary. It's they're You know, it's sort of like how Google has to have its name and everything. We don't need this. We didn't need three different pieces of branding in one name.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope honestly that I wish what Microsoft would do instead of giving us kind of the same web app but slightly better is actually make this like an application. Um, that is one of the things that's really missing from like I know part of the goal here is to sort of make Copilot like an extra feature in all of the Microsoft apps. Like that's their goal. It's just kind of always there. But like I would like to use this in a way that is not connected to the other apps. Like I don't use Edge. Even when I do use Edge, um, the UI being like on the side of like sort of taking off whatever I'm doing, it doesn't really make sense for me. Um, the best implementations of these I've seen is like it needs to be like an app that I open and I get the chat view, and also it needs to be sort of like in Windows now. This is like a panel you open with like a keyboard shortcut wherever you are in the system, like that. That's much more useful. Um, Ideally, they could make something like that that is cross-platform. That'd be cool. I know like Raycast on macOS, which is sort of like a Spotlight replacement. They have a like GPT feature that costs a little bit. It's like a subscription because they have to pay OpenAI. Um, but that's like a keyboard shortcut you do wherever you are, and then you can type in it and you get a response, and it's in like this interface that is not a web app. Um, so I'd like to see Microsoft do something like that at some point. That seems like it would be a good value add for the Microsoft 365 subscription. Like you know, you get Word and Excel, and you get the Copilot app that maybe has a few usability improvements over just the website.
So when Microsoft has had, or after some of Microsoft's announcements of Copilot, I watched, I think it was the Microsoft Build conference where they were really hyping it up. And I know there was at least one other. Um, yeah, I really appreciate what they're doing. I got to give them credit. Like Copilot is actually a cool, or well, Copilot in Windows is a very cool idea, and what they want to do with it is incredible, or could be. Like, sorry, I shouldn't. I hate using it. I hate phrasing it that way. I'm not sure that's really accurate, but they're on the road to doing something that actually suddenly makes Windows, in at least for a lot of people, could make Windows a lot more enticing than a Mac. Just because you could very realistically give your computer sort of an instruction, and it might require installing a few plugins or something, but for the most part, it can start like figuring out how to fulfill your instruction and actually just do it without having to install a bunch of other software and things like that. That's a very cool potential for this. That being said, I feel like people want this more across phones, for one, where Microsoft does not really have that much of a foothold. Obviously, they don't make a phone OS anymore, but even like their apps, does nobody installs Microsoft's apps to their phones.
Yeah, I've talked about this with a friend of mine. The Chat GPT app on like iPhone and Android, in terms of like design and usability, is miles ahead of the Bing app. Like the Bing app is such a piece of shit. I have it on my phone. It is terrible.
I agree.
Um, and so that would be nice to see Microsoft try a little bit harder there. Again, like I don't know why this can't be like, like when you pay for Microsoft 365, you get like a full Word experience on the web, and you get the Word app on your computer if you want it, and you get the full features on Word on your phone or your tablet. I don't know why Copilot can't. I know why Copilot can't be this right now because they're running at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and so as a result of that, most iterations of Copilot are just like the same web UI, like sort of embedded in different ways, like you know the sidebar in Microsoft Edge, like it's just the website. Like that's how I was using Bing Chat and Chrome for forever before they like unblocked it. It's just that like someone grabbed the URL that loads in that Edge sidebar, and you can just put that in the address bar in another web browser and it works. Um, so like I know why it's not like this because they are like have not just been put in the effort to polish it in that way. Or it's just not a priority because it's Microsoft, and design is never really their top thing they've got going on. It's the thing they work on very late. But
Yeah. Um,
I'd
so,
like a better. I'd like an actual Copilot app anyway. That's my main takeaway.
well, one, I certainly want some sort of Copilot app, or at least I would want one to exist. I'd like to try it. I don't know if I would necessarily
Or
become.
or unblock it in Safari, awesome. So I can at least get put it halfway there.
Well, the thing is, I feel like the thing I want is the promise that they've kind of made for Copilot on Windows, but I want that on a Mac. And I know that's probably asking a lot, but that's something I'm way more likely to use. I'm not really super invested in the idea of switching back to Windows. I'd like to have a Windows machine around, but it's not going to be my daily driver. It's not going to be my main computer. Therefore, you know, if it's actually going to be useful enough, I want it on a Mac. And like Diablo said, this could just be a thing where Apple's just waiting, and at some stage in the somewhere future, Apple will be like, yeah, we saw you wanted what Microsoft was doing. They will never say it this way, by the way. But we saw that, and now we're going to integrate that into Shortcuts. So now Shortcuts does AI things. And
Yeah,
be happy
the
because
Chat
now it'll just do
GPT
things
app
for you.
on the Chat GPT app on iPhone has pretty good shortcut support, which again like helps it like it just generally useful. Although a lot of it you need the Chat GPT Plus subscription for, so I can't use most of it. I'm not paying for that, but you know.
But can it do, I mean, can it really do a lot of stuff? Like, for example, I know this is one of the things everyone's always talking about. Can it do things like, um, you tell it that you need to invite a bunch of people for a party, and you want to order some food, and you want to do 5 other things? Can it work out with? Is Corbin still on? I think Corbin just dropped out. Yep, Corbin apparently fell off again. That's weird. It didn't even make a sound as he disappeared. Anyway, yeah. So my question becomes: Can this thing actually reach out and like try to schedule with people? Is it realistic or possible for it to try to set up like calendar entries and things like that? I don't know. But if it can't do those things, like that's what Copilot on Windows is, at least supposedly someday, going to become. I don't know that it's there yet, but it's supposed to be. Like that's one of the types of experiences that they advertised as like a future thing. Oh, it seems to think I lost connection. Okay, refreshing page. Oh, okay, so it must have broken on my end. Weird. Yeah, I'm going to, because well, you probably shouldn't believe me right away, because I'm not going to touch this I'm not going to even think about switching it to something else for at least a week or two, but oh goody, and OBS broke my oh, and it lost you again. Okay, so Jitsi fixing that. Okay, so it should have you again.
Okay.
Yep. It can hear you, and now I have to fix my camera because for whatever reason, that doesn't even make sense. OBS decided that my webcam input needed to get screwed up. Why'd that happen?
Everyone in the chat, next time there's a game stream or something I'm not around, you need to bully Cody into setting up a different video chat service.
We'll see if that happens.
It doesn't work when I ask for it.
But... Well, to be fair, when you ask for it, we're in the middle of using it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean right now, but
on another stream, I will 100% forget by the time that stream is over. So
I know.
Yeah, these are lost causes.
You got a week.
A week. Good luck with that.
Actually, you've got more than a week because I won't be here next week. So you have 2 weeks to figure this out.
Well, next week was already in question anyway because
Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing about Thanksgiving yet. That could end up being a throwaway week. It could end up being a something else week. We shall see.
Carson said Google Meet. Google Meet works fine whenever I have a meeting, but I don't know what the free limits are at this point.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. We could probably use it because that's what we were using for a long time before switching to Jitsi.
That was before they started more limits.
Yeah,
because that was all like after COVID. I think Skype is definitely at least a few hours because I use Skype for Tech Tales, or Discord.
Yeah, I really don't want to use Skype.
Well, Skype works. I don't know. Microsoft might have forgotten they have it, but you know what? It still works.
You know what? Actually, I should do. We've joked about it, but I really should just make it FaceTime because that will actually force you to use your Mac, which you've not always been reliable about in the past. So
I've been on my Mac.
There have been a few times that you decided to use Linux or something.
Not in the past.
Not in the past.
I haven't
month?
used.
Okay.
Well, not in the past year, probably. I know there's been a couple times where I'm already on my I'm switched over to my Windows PC and I don't want to switch back, but that doesn't really happen at this time of the day. So
okay, Carson is saying that Google Meet is 24 hours for one-on-one calls and 60 minutes for group meetings. I'd say that should work because in theory, it'll mostly be one-on-one calls with maybe the random rare exception that Zach hops on.
Yeah, Google Meet's fine, FaceTime's fine. I don't, whatever. So anyway, you were asking about ChatGPT's shortcuts and stuff, and if I look in, I don't know if I have all of the options visible that require a subscription, but you can use it in a workflow. So there's a shortcut to ask ChatGPT something, and then the output gets sent to the rest of the shortcut, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Or you can just have it start a voice conversation, which will open the app and sort of immediately put you in the voice typing things. It's like Siri or whatever. So it's got some cool stuff. But it's also ChatGPT, so unless you pay for the plus and then you get the web browsing plugin and stuff like that, it's not very useful to me. Just sort of baseline ChatGPT is not, it's never helpful to me unless I'm doing some programming, and then it's fine. But primarily I will use this stuff for very quick information gathering when I don't want to scrounge through some wiki somewhere. I'm just honestly, most of my usage recently has been like, I'm playing a video game. Where is this item? I don't want to like go look through a game to find what this item is, and it's pretty good at that.
So when I think about, or what I was talking about, or I guess just to give a more concrete example, I don't think it's really there until the point where you can say, hey servant, I want you to send invites to all of the people in my contact list named office friends, or with a tag office friends. And order, I don't know, order like a party sub platter from somewhere that makes food, so not Subway.
Right. Right. Like ideally it should not be an app. It should just be
Yeah.
like a thing that exists in your
Yeah, you need to be able to give it an order, ideally multi-step order, and it should be able to look into your data, whatever data you give it access to, which, contact list would be kind of a given. It should be able to make determinations from that list. Diablo sounds like Google Assistant, if only. And it should be able to take real world actions. So creating... Did Jitsi just die on us again? This time I think it was... Yeah, okay, it was Corbin that fell off.
it just disconnected me. It's like you're now disconnected. It's like my internet's fine.
Okay, yeah. Jitsi's gonna be gone by next week. I'll do it.
About it, and it's fighting back. It does. This is like when I order a new computer with my existing computer. It's like, no.
Oh my, come on. I don't buy that. I sort of don't buy that one just happened.
It did. I this time I completely reloaded the tab, so I don't know if that affects it at all. But yeah. Rest. Jitsi.
Yeah. Jitsi needs to go. Wait, what is that a bookmark that I have? Huh. I need to figure out what that Google Meet room that I happen to have coming up in my immediate suggestions is. I wonder if that's a room that I'm not supposed to have still in my address bar, or in my history. Anyway, so yeah, point is, I want these things to have, I don't want them to have real world access. That's a scary thought, but at the same time, that's exactly what I want them to have. And that's what Microsoft was already pitching as a feature of Copilot in Windows. They really did not sell it as something that's going to work elsewhere, and a big part of their whole pitch, and this is where it does actually link with what Diablo was saying, is it's kind of like Google Assistant, is they really wanted people to build the automations that something like a ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever, they wanted people to build these automations that, one, could be plugins on your system, but two, could also be something that their chat service would reach out to and be able to communicate with on kind of a protocol level. And
yeah, that most of that integration is missing right now.
Yeah, it doesn't exist yet, but it seems like that's very close on their goals.
Yeah, because the Copilot in Windows right now is, again, it's the same web interface. It just has a few sort of high level integrations. Like, I know it can open an app on your PC and it can rearrange your application windows, but it's it's still, there's still more plugins that need to be figured out there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something.
So anyway,
I'm gonna give Jitsi a thumbs down. There it goes. Perfect.
All right. So let's talk about Android and all the companies that don't want to use it anymore.
Okay. Oh, sorry. That's my alarm.
So let's see.
I'm gonna get more water. You can start talking.
Okay. So a couple of stories came up this week hitting this topic, and it's almost kind of funny how much they are they're really bringing up the possibility of a sort of Androidless future for various places. Amazon was, I think, the first one to come up of the two. And the story goes that Amazon is planning to get rid of Android entirely on its Fire TVs, smart displays, and a number of possibly a number of other, well, not possibly, but a number of other devices. Supposedly, a lot of their Fire TV products, or sorry, not Fire TV, but Fire products will just lose Android. Isabella, nope, definitely did not say gaming was today. It's a weekend thing. Anyway, this is a tech podcast day. So, the story goes, and that there is a little bit of, or there's a lot of vagary here. A site named LowPass, I admit I've never heard of them, which also brings at least a little bit of skepticism that this is real. But LowPass has reported that Amazon is planning to switch to a Linux-based OS, which, as most people of course know, Android is actually Linux-based, so this isn't necessarily the biggest of changes. But yeah, they are apparently going to switch to sort of an embedded Linux OS. Their apps are going to be built on React Native, and this is going to become basically the platform going forward for Fire TVs, smart displays, probably other TVs that also feature Amazon's interface, and presumably any other embedded stuff. What this article really desperately tries to avoid is saying outright that the Fire tablets are going to switch. It makes a couple of mentions of the Fire tablets, but really dodges ever actually discussing them. Hate those pop-ups for newsletters. Anyway, so at this stage, it's still kind of unclear what is going to happen with Amazon's entire product line. To be fair, if Amazon kills Android on its tablets, that mostly indicates they're probably going to get rid of their Android app store, or at least it reduces the likelihood that would stick around. It would take away one of their largest selling points for keeping that around. Let's see. Apps is always a question. Yeah, exactly. So and Diablo, yeah. TV doesn't need as many apps. I would argue that for the most part, TV actually doesn't really need Android apps. It's really easy, and this is one of the things that stood out to me. The claim that they would switch over to using React Native for building apps really isn't that strange of a concept, because as long as the OS provides a decent video player at a native level, it's really not hard to build an interface in React Native using, presumably Amazon would provide some sort of SDK for developers, or rather, sorry, for a lot of companies. So a lot of companies could very easily just build out a fairly straightforward and consistent grid interface. It would look relatively consistent from one app to the next, obviously with a lot of, styling choices. A lot of this may not even require developers. Like, just in all honesty, it may not even require developers to build a lot of these things. It could probably be done with like almost an auto-generated app. And that's the sort of thing that you can do with a TV interface. It's not asking that much.
Yeah, I
Whereas,
mean,
well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, with the exception of Apple TV, um, basically every TV platform uses the same code base for apps, and the code base is just an embedded web app.
Yeah.
That's how all of them work. So as long as like Amazon, like we've seen this now from, I know TiVo right now, or the company that owns TiVo. I forget what, I think they're called like Xperi, but right now they're building up a smart TV platform, and they already have like all the major apps because it's really easy. As long as like you might have to pay the companies a little bit to care, but
Yeah.
it's not that hard for them to just, as long as there's like a web wrapper or something, like it's not that hard to get something working. So I don't, yeah, Amazon should not have an issue um, getting most apps to work on a new platform, as long as there's a capable web framework.
Yeah, this takes incredibly little effort for TVs to be able to support a shift to a different OS. Um, Obviously, that would lose out on things like gaming. If if for example you were selling a lot of games to play on a set-top box out of the Amazon App Store, then sure, that would actually be a big deal because you would lose those games. Now, that then turns around and asks the question, would Amazon really lose anything? Do you think users are actively using their set-top box for gaming? I'm pretty sure the answer is a hard no.
They they could put in an Android compatibility layer if they really wanted to for stuff like that. I will say probably the bigger loss is that there are Android apps that are used on those that are not web apps. But I think it's mostly stuff that Amazon like either doesn't care about or like pretends not to care about. So there's like VPN apps that you can install on Fire devices for streaming other stuff. There's Kodi, not Kodi U, but Kodi the
KODI.
XDMC. Yeah, that's really big on Fire TVs. The Plex app on there might be like the same native Android TV thing, which I'm sure works better than a web app. There are some examples like that that aren't just games, but again, most people want something like this just to like have something fast and cheap and reliable to watch Netflix on. So that's what they're gonna target, and that's what like Roku has been really successful at. Roku has a still pretty bare bones operating system. I believe the apps on Roku are mostly web based, and it's worked great for them. They can sell $15-20 streaming sticks all day long,
Yeah.
and all the ones that like for like several family trips in a row, I was like fixing the TV issues by shutting off all smart TV features and just getting a Roku stick, and it worked great every time.
Yeah, exactly. Um so you brought up one thing that I I was going to say for a little bit, but yeah, switching to the context of the Android or of the Fire tablets. Um since it's really unclear if they would actually switch to or switch away from Android on the tablets, the one counter possibility is they could do a compatibility layer, something or a runtime that would be able to handle Android packages, APKs. So, for clarity, this would not be a new thing. BlackBerry did it over a decade ago, or about a decade ago, with BlackBerry OS 10. They technically you couldn't use a bare APK. You had to repackage it a little bit, but I mean it was an automated process. You ran a command line tool and re-signed the file format that it was in. I forget what it was called, and that's it. No changes to code. You didn't have to recompile anything. It was very very simple just to put it in their package service and fix it. So, it's not that unrealistic or unreasonable that Amazon could try to do this. Will they do it? That I think is a bigger question. Because it is still a lot of maintenance work. I don't think there's really a lot of advantages for them to switch away from Android if they're still going to go to all the trouble of supporting the runtime and the full API that would be necessary for this. That's a lot of work, and I'm not sure that I see them doing that. It honestly really is just it's cheaper and easier to keep the Fire tablet ecosystem on Android, or alternatively, they could try to go a different route with this. I'm not really sure what, but they could try to go the WebOS route and, push app developers to make web apps. They could try just switching away entirely and say, hey, we want developers to build all new apps for us, which will never happen.
I don't know if I see the tablets ever switching, just because like Android is like, that's what Android is built for. Is like if Amazon wants to build from scratch, they're building all of the battery efficiency stuff from scratch. They're building a lot of the networking stuff, all the account systems, and like when you look at everything on like the Amazon App Store, like the only reason those apps and games are there is because a lot of people buy the Fire tablets, and the effort of repackaging apps intended for normal Android devices for Fire devices isn't that much work. And like the risk to reward is pretty good, especially if you're like making a kid's game or something. The most work you're doing is like swapping out stuff that needs Google Play for Amazon's equivalent frameworks. But that's really it. So it seems like a sweet deal for everyone involved right now. I don't really see Amazon switching that. Maybe at some point they would make like a very cheap Fire tablet that would use that OS, because the main reason they're doing this is, number one, AOSP just has a lot of stuff that you don't really need in a TV or another similar embedded thing. Like the first device this is on is the Echo Show, which is like a very small smart display. Like that doesn't need Android for anything.
Even Google moved away from using Android to run this stuff. They wanted Fuchsia on it eventually.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't need that. So, like it makes a lot of sense on devices like that. Makes a lot of sense on TVs because again, you don't really have apps. It just needs to be very cheap and run. Tablets are very different.
Yeah.
And phones. So, I would be surprised if they pulled something like that. And we've also seen kind of another example of this besides Google is like Huawei, where Huawei has their Harmony OS, which is called the same thing across all their devices. But
before we switch to that one,
I wasn't pivoting topics. I was just saying like they have an OS that is like the same name and like to a user is kind of the same thing, but they're very different software platforms. Like they have one on phones that's like, we'll get to it, but mostly Android. And then they also use that for like the OS on their watch, which is like some like real-time OS thing that's completely different. So yeah, I'd be surprised if Amazon switched their tablet stuff over. Yeah, Diablo's saying Android things. Man, Android things. That was fun. Remember when Google made a fork of Android that like 2 devices used? Good times.
Yeah. Yeah, so okay. I was typing that out. I could have, I guess, waited and just said it, but yeah, it technically, if you want to nitpick, it's true. Google Smart Displays were not officially running Android; they were running CastOS. But as a lot of people dug around into CastOS, they found that it was literally just a very, very stripped down version of Android. And by very stripped down, I mean we're talking like they cut it down to the true bare minimums, and they compiled it into just a binary blob that was flashed to the ROMs, and that was it. Like, it was a very, very lightweight version of Android. To call it not Android is, again, like I said in chat, it's kind of like saying watchOS is not iOS. It's still iOS. It's just not all of it. And that actually wouldn't be the best example. The best example, though most people won't really get this one, is back when Apple claimed that the iPhone was running macOS. Obviously it wasn't, but it technically was actually running parts of macOS. It was just very, very stripped down, and then they added a whole bunch of other stuff on top. So
same kernel and some other frameworks.
Actually, weirdly, well, I'd have to go back and check this, but if I remember, the iPhone was technically running not the same kernel. They had supposedly switched the kernel to something brand new, but it was running the same file system. It was running the same process scheduler, except tuned completely differently. So, sort of different. And I don't know. I think like the security model or something. There were a few other things that were different. Plus the original app structure, they did end up changing it, but the app structure for their internal apps on the iPhone was actually the same as the app structure that they were using on macOS. But again, they have since completely changed that, so that doesn't really match up anymore. And they've changed almost everything about iOS anyway, so, a lot of things have changed over the years. They obviously don't even use the same file system anymore. But okay, so to what you were saying and why I wanted to cut you off, I wanted to throw a curveball. What if Amazon is like, you know what, this Fire tablet thing is just, it's okay, but it's not really working for us. We're going to start pushing Windows. That would be a curveball.
Yeah, they would.
I mean, it would be nearly impossible to still sell these super dirt cheap Fire tablets running any sort of Windows, but I could Diablo Panos would have a field day. Exactly. And that's the thing. Amazon and Microsoft have always had this really close working relationship. I mean, Windows now runs the Amazon App Store for its whole Android on Windows thing. The two companies are practically throwing footballs back and forth when it comes to like trading employees. It wouldn't be that crazy for them to say, you know what, we could work a deal to just turn this into like the lightest weight version of Windows that we can put on a tablet, and we will encourage people to start developing for Windows again, but it would be sort of tablet apps, basically kind of going back to Microsoft's Metro interface, which became their whatever the hell they called it, that Windows style or something. I forget what it was called. Yeah, they could do it. It would definitely cost more. Like, there's no way you can have a $69, I don't know if that's how much it costs, but there's no way that their absolute dirt cheap tablet could really still exist while running Windows. But if they're pushing kind of like a very stripped down embedded version, which I think Microsoft would be willing to do, they could make that happen. And I
don't. At that point, I don't see what the utility would be beyond, in comparison to just using their non-Android thing, because both of those gets you like no Netflix app. That's part of the problem.
Well, one of those gets you one of those gets you absolutely zero application developers. The other one gets you some app developers
5.
who are like, you know what? I could probably recompile my thing that's already written in C#. I could recompile it and it'll run on this. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. That's worth the 15 minutes it takes to change target and upload this. And it won't work for a lot of apps anyway, but it would work for some.
Yeah, I think there would have to be more than Amazon roped into this for that to happen. Like, I don't see Microsoft making like a... Yeah, I think what like maybe could motivate something like that would be Microsoft also has the problem right now where these like handheld gaming PCs are becoming popular and they just do not have a UI for that form factor whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because, you know, all of the like software stuff for like, you know, 8-inch, like 9-inch tablets that were around when in like the Windows 8 and like early Windows 10 days, like all of that is gone now. That's been all ripped out. So like I could see something where like maybe they make a different launcher for those kinds of devices, and then that is also shared with something Amazon might build. I could kind of see something like that happening. But I don't know. Be weird.
Sorry, I just saw what Zach posted into the Discord chat, and I want to go tell him why he got that. It's his fault for, well, it's not his fault. It's a bad interface, but it's obvious why. Anyway, so yeah, I don't get me wrong. I don't think Amazon's about to switch and start pushing Windows on their tablets. I just throw that out there because it to me actually makes at least as much sense as saying, oh hey, next, you know, they're gonna kill Android entirely and go over to this weird Linux thing that nobody is ever going to develop for. Like, to me, that is a less likely scenario than trying to jam a version of Windows onto their tablets. At least people might want that. Nobody wants the version where there are no apps.
I mean, $50 Windows PC would be cool. It'd be very bad in practice, but it sounds cool.
I mean, okay, Amazon, do they actually sell a $50 tablet? I don't
The
think
base Fire tablet, I'm pretty sure, is on sale for like $40 a lot of the time.
Not on sale. Let's not cheat too much, but the Fire 7 is okay. It is $60. Yeah.
Fire 7. So, I'm scrolling down to Keepa. What is the lowest price Amazon has sold it? It's been $40 a couple times.
Yeah. So, I mean, sale price is whatever, because I think we've even assumed that Amazon doesn't even make money on their $60 version, or make money on it when it's $60. But sorry, I'm slightly amused that the bottom of their featured image, it looks like my movie post with just all the different brands spattered across the bottom. Anyway, and that's with ads. Yeah. But yeah, I don't feel like this is making
Diablo. Windows already has ads, so that part's covered.
Yeah, it really does.
What are a few more ads? You know, you set up your Amazon Windows 11 tablet, you get an ad for Microsoft Edge, and then you get an ad for The Boys, just right after one right after the other.
Yeah. So, regardless, the Windows thing is more just I can come up with something that I think is at least as ridiculous as their possibility of killing the Fire tablets with Android. I don't think that they're going to do either of those things. I think they're just going to keep Android on the Fire tablets because it's possible. It costs them relatively little. Their strategic advantage is better to sticking with that unless they're planning on just axing the whole project. But people have asked this question repeatedly. Are the Fire tablets even making them money? Like, obviously not in the direct sales necessarily, but in the, like, are they actually profiting from this project that requires a lot of developer time, a lot of manufacturing cost? Obviously, like, people buy these things, realize they suck, and then return them in high numbers. Like, where's that transition point where they're like, you know what? This is just wasting money. Let's kill this whole project. The only thing is, I kind of think also if they kill the Fire tablets, I start to wonder, like, how long before, like, Fire TVs stop selling. I think having the whole ecosystem still looks good, even if people don't necessarily care.
Yeah, and as long as that ecosystem holds to some extent, then they're getting some amount of money from Microsoft for that Windows 11 integration. So
Yeah.
it probably all balances out in the end. There's just a lot of push and pull.
Yeah. Though, to be fair, they could just willingly say, yeah, we're done with Android. We're done with the tablets. Just whatever. We don't care anymore. But
they could pull a Google.
But they could just leave the Amazon App Store operational and just keep soaking in money off of people who are hooked on the $99 microtransactions. Because that is still, like, the one way that they make a ton of money off of that App Store. It's still the cheapest way to get currency in most games. Also, hello, David. How's it going? Anyway, so the other company that made their possible, or not possible, but seeming Android exit is Huawei. So they have Harmony OS Next. It's their we swear it's not Android. As most people know, the whole thing with being put on the entity list years ago and basically being cut off from US technologies, it basically forced them to start shifting away from Android. And over time, oh, hey, Kirby. Over time, Huawei developed Harmony OS, and now they've been slowly shifting towards pushing their own app store. Or not slowly, they kind of rushed for it, but they built their own SDK, app store, platform, the whole 9 yards. And evidently they are now going to kill Android app support entirely. Were there any other details on this? I read all this stuff before, and now I'm starting to forget it.
I don't have the link in front of me. From what I remember, the change that's happening now is that the operating system will no longer accept APK packages. So you can't just take an Android app that's unmodified and throw it on a Harmony OS device at a minimum. Like, I'm sure it's still going to be using like 98% of the same APIs, but the point is pretty clearly to be like, your app has to be like built for our thing or it's not going to run.
Yeah.
This is now an Android fork. So I'm sure there's going to be similarities, but it seems like they're kind of ready to go in their other direction now. And there's probably going to be similarities because, all the other OEMs in China have their own ecosystem and app store. And I don't know how closely they're sticking to Android, but there's going to be a desire for something close to a shared platform. Just like we get in the US with Android and Google services.
Yeah, which you just said one of the operative details, Google services. The reality is, if you installed most things to a Huawei phone for the last while, you didn't have Google services on or Play services on there anyway. So the reality is 90, I don't know what the percentage really is, but I'm sure it's somewhere between 98 and 99.5% of all APKs that you could find have some sort of Google services in them. And therefore, if you installed them on these phones, they were already going to crash. So, in practical terms, supporting APKs as raw APKs already kind of was pointless. Um, so, yeah, killing this off in a weird way is actually probably just saving them from customer service issues. The counter to that, obviously, is some people would also be able to sideload Play services. I'm assuming they could sideload Play services. I guess maybe Huawei could have broken that capability. But as such, there were ways around it, but the amount of effort and what you would get out of it, and who knows what other stuff is being blocked, may have made those unrealistic. I don't know. Regardless, this is something that was kind of long in the cards, but it was also I don't know. I've always kind of assumed that they would just sort of do a like, let's ignore this issue and hope that one day we can get back into the good graces with the US and Google and just sort of re-enable things with time. Evidently, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like the Chinese device manufacturers have been pretty separated from Google for a while. Not just Huawei, because like Google doesn't really have most of their services in China, because they mostly pulled out of that market. I don't know if it was like 10 years ago. It was a long time ago. So
Yeah.
definitely interesting to see that progress. And meanwhile, like Huawei is still able to build phones somehow. So whatever workarounds they're finding seems to be working.
Yeah. By all accounts, they've taken an extremely massive hit to market share, not just worldwide, but even in China. Theoretically, as a result of the US's ban. I don't know necessarily whether or not this is all playing out for them. I assume they're clawing back some of their market share, but I actually haven't looked in a while. The counter to this, though, is Huawei is also turning out phones in China that are like the best camera phones that they have. Like every 6 months, I see some article about like showing off the really crazy new thing that they put in their camera, and it's like, wow, why can't we have that? That's really good. I mean, cheers to us for having all the software smarts that are like processing images, making them look better, but cheers to them for just like straight up putting in better camera technology. For the most part, they just actually are.
Yeah, Huawei and Oppo are still going pretty crazy. And so I think I will leave now because I want food. So
okay.
Now that we've sufficiently talked about Android.
Yes,
feels like the good old days back when this was an Android police show.
Yes, we've completed our contractual obligation to talk about the things. Okay, well,
and I also have my my headset to play with.
Oh yes, Corbin has decided that it was necessary for him to give scans of his retinas to Mark Zuckerberg and pay him for it.
Yeah. I did get it on sale, so, and I cheated them out of $30 of store money, because when you use an affiliate link, you get $30 of store credit. So I already snagged Job Simulator, and I have $10 left. So, but yeah, I've only tried this for like 30 minutes. David
And
said he already uses Facebook. Corbin is too forgotten. I actually deleted my Facebook because I wasn't really using it because I didn't like it. So, you know, good times. But yeah, I might have more thoughts about this by next week. I've only played with it for like 30 minutes because it had to charge, and also I had my job, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. We're still gonna bully you about it.
That's fine.
No. One of these days, I will conk somebody on the back of the head, steal their Vision Pro, and I will show off my cool headset.
Yeah, I do look forward to when there is a Vision headset, Apple Vision headset, within my realm of affordability, which will be in 8 years.
Oh, I love the optimism. Um, but no, that's fair. So, anyway, is there anything you want to remind people to check out?
Yeah, just go to spacebar.news and read some stuff and share with friends. Very slowly growing there. It's been cool, but I haven't written anything recently. I might write a review next, not for this, but for something else that might be fun. But yeah,
Haven't
I haven't really
anything
done a
recently.
review there.
That's kind of like your situation with Tech Tales.
Yep. Well, I did record a Tech Tales, but now I have to edit it. So that's gonna be a while.
The anti-motivation.
Unfortunately, this stupid thing called real life keeps getting in the way of and also me playing video games. I did put all those hours of Starfield definitely put a damper into the output of everything else I do, but you know it's all just whenever I have free time. And in the case of this, in the case of Tech Tales, it's when I have free time, and also the energy and willpower to record something for 2 hours, and it sounds like I'm actually alive instead of dying. So that's why the space bar is nice, because I can just write things, and it doesn't matter if I'm alive or dead. It's okay. It doesn't come through in the writing.
Well, on the plus side, we're getting really, really close to the no news season. And by really close, I mean like next week. So,
well, last week.
Yeah. But you'll be free from writing all of news, and you'll just be writing deals. So pretty soon you'll be desperate for something else to do.
That's the hope. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am getting back to my pile of things I was going to write for How to Geek as well. Got some guides in there, some hot takes. I think what I might grab from the pile next is the thing I've been meaning to write for like 6 months, which is you don't need a new webcam, you need a webcam light, because that has been very helpful for me.
I certainly am one of the biggest, loudest proponents of your camera's not the problem. It's the light you're trying to take photos in. I very, very much loudly have that stance. That said, I don't know that I would necessarily sing the praises of a webcam light, just because they are so tiny generally.
Well, I like my I've got it up here. I've got my Logitech Litra thing.
Yeah.
Which is like a very tiny light box. It's got like a soft light going around. But yeah, so
Yeah. And believe me, I know full well normal people are not going to be doing this, but
No.
you know, there's my laptop, there's my softbox for size comparison. I mean, they're pretty close together. Normal people are not going to put a softbox
Yeah.
in their
I
office. I'm
I like
fully aware of
because
that,
of
but
because of how big it is and like your proximity to it. I like you're like, here's what I've got my light. It's like the sun is in here.
the funny thing is, it on camera it looks really bright. I can look at it now and it's like, no, that's not bright at all. I mean, it technically is turned up to maximum, but it's a pretty small light inside. It's not
Yeah.
that heavy duty. And yeah, I mean, I can look plainly at it. There's a sheet of diffusion cloth in front of it, and it is not that bright. But yeah, I mean, it's enough to light me, and it's a large light source, which it makes for
And it's
better lighting.
it's how you get your tannin.
Yeah. I am so much lighter skinned than I actually should be. Lack of sun will do that.
Well, that's it for me. Farewell.
All right. Well, take it easy, and I will catch you not in the next one, but sometime in the future.
No. Yes. Okay, bye.
Later. All right. Anyway, so let's see. I only really had, well, I have legal woes is the next major topic. Wait, what the? Why did all the wet camera settings in OBS get goofed? Yeah. See you next time on Google Meet. Maybe what I should do is threaten him. The only way that I'll switch to Google Meet is if he comes on next week and just babbles incoherently for a while. But no, we'll let him stay in his whatever situation for a little longer. He can go home and do home things. Anyway, I'm gonna have to. Yeah, that works. Kind of. Wait, does that work? Yeah, that works. Okay. I just had to resize a window so that it fits now. I've got to redo all my scenes in OBS. Anyway, so Google has had some legal woes this last week and a half ish. One of the bigger ones, or one of the two big ones, is their antitrust trial going on in DC right now. Of course, they are being sued basically for being too dominant in the advertising industry, and advertising search, web, browsers, kind of everything. I haven't really been following this case particularly closely. It's kind of hard to care too much about it, but one of the fun little dramas that has come out of this case is it was revealed that Google was paying 36% of its revenue generated from anyone using the Safari browser with Google search. Let's see. Oh, I know they mentioned it somewhere, but anyway. This is one of those, like, holy cow, Google's providing all the service. All Apple did was make a browser, which, to say all they did is make a browser is kind of like underplaying it, but this all stems from the fact that Google is paying Apple to keep Google as the default search engine. And of course, if you ask people in the courtroom, they would have told you, by the way, anyone who's been paying attention to this a little more closely, you've seen the lawyers actually try to make it seem as if switching your default search engine is the hardest act anyone has ever encountered. And remember that I said that, because we're going to make fun of that again shortly. But to them, switching default search engine is tantamount to I don't know, programming software for an Apollo mission. It's apparently nearly impossible. Or so the lawyers seem to make it sound. Um, uh, yeah, pay Apple to keep a worse competitor. Yeah. Um, but yeah, this has been one of those big revelations that Google is actually just sort of shoveling money at Apple to remain the default search engine, and for the most part, just to be friendly in whatever capacity. And it has not, to my knowledge, been brought up in this trial, but I think there's honestly a bigger explanation to this. And it kind of goes back to that time when every rumor suggested Apple was going to build its own search engine. I mean, they were already using, I started that sentence hoping that the name would pop out, and it just didn't. That other thing that was kind of like a search engine that was really good at doing math. I know somebody is going to say the name in chat within the next 15 seconds, and you will be right. That is exactly the thing I'm talking about. But aside from that, basically, Google has, I think, largely been paying them to just not compete. It's not just a matter of please make us the default. It's also a matter of you have the option of buying somebody or building your own thing. As long as you don't do that, we'll just give you the money that you would have made off that. And for Apple, that's a great equation because they don't have to try to be better. They don't have to try to be the best. Carson, no, not Spotlight. I'm talking about the it's an actual service. It's, the name is on the tip of my tongue. It's the sad part is I know it's kind of I want to say 2-part name, but it's just not coming to me. But I keep wanting to say Stable Diffusion, which is obviously wrong. That is not even remotely a search engine or anything like it. No, not Neva. It's I can't think of the name of it. But it's a thing everyone used to use when they needed to do scientific research or math, math calculations from basically kind of like a search interface. I just cannot think of the name of it. Wolfram Alpha. Thank you. That's it. Yes, Wolfram Alpha was the name. And Apple was using that inside of Siri for a long time. I don't think they still are, but maybe they are. Ask Jeeves, I love it. But anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if Google is just looking at the scenario that could have come up where Apple would have been competing with them. And if Apple introduced its own search engine, which became its default and had everything Apple was capable of doing, which I think we all know after watching the Apple Maps debacle, we all know Apple was not going to make the best search engine or even a particularly competitive search engine right out of the gate. Regardless, I think what Google was facing is they just didn't want to have to compete with a company that had the ability to make their own search engine the default and a strong competitor in mobile. Not only that, but I mean, just realistically, I think Apple didn't want to do that either. Not just because it would have been a costly endeavor, but it would have forced Apple even more into the spotlight. Can you imagine US regulators being like, oh, I guess we don't have to go after Google because Apple needs to be the target now. Because, people are already eyeing Apple over and over again for possible regulatory actions, though for whatever reason they'll never actually break the glass and go for it. But yeah, if Apple had ever launched their own search engine, I really think that would have been a doomsday scenario for Apple. They would have had regulators just coming after them left, right, and center for abusive position. Anyway, in case of emergency, Skynet. Yeah. So, when all is said and done, I kind of get why Google is paying Apple this much. I think it's more the shock that they are paying out tens of billions of dollars every year, basically just so Apple will keep existing and keep having a whole ton of iPhone users, and that's it. Like, that's all they need to do. Just as long as Apple keeps winning in the smartphone market, Google will keep paying them a boatload of money. And it's a really, really wild scenario, but that's where we're at. The other legal topic, which I'm not as versed on as I was hoping to be, I bookmarked this a week ago and had every intention of really just diving in and getting into it, is the Epic versus Google case. You live, I live, bro. Yep. That really is the persistent aspect of this. So the the Epic versus Google case, for anyone who hasn't been following this, The Verge has been sort of live blogging it. It's currently at, I believe, still 11 pages. Let's see. Yep. 11 pages worth of posts. And these pages, frankly, do take a lot longer to read than it looks like they would. So yeah, this is a sizable endeavor. Like I said, I tried catching up today, but I only made it through like 3 pages in advance, and then I kind of read a little bit of the latest stuff. What's really interesting about what I have seen in the trial so far is how much I think Epic would really be losing this fight if it weren't for the fact that Google is already seen as kind of a manipulative, opportunistic company. And a lot of this kind of stems from the fact that a lot of what Epic is actually chasing after Google for has very little to do with Google's actual okay, well, sorry. I suppose let me back up really quick and just for the quick refresher in case anyone actually doesn't know this. This lawsuit is because Epic doesn't like the fact that Google and Apple. Well, this lawsuit's about Google. They already had the lawsuit with Apple. They don't like the fact that these companies have near total control over the app markets for their particular platforms. Google's Play Store on Android and the Apple App Store on iPhone, they are the ways everybody gets apps. Strictly speaking, you can sideload apps for Android. You really can't do that in any meaningful way on iOS. It is doable. For those that don't know, it is actually possible to sideload to an extent, but you have to jump through a lot of really unpleasant hoops. You've got to install a bunch of dev tools. You can do it on an iPhone, it's just not worth it. On Android, it's as simple as just get the APK and do a quick install. Though very notably, the way Google's distribution platform works now, it's not like it's not like single APKs are distributed from the Play Store that often anymore. You usually get the split APK treatment. Anyway, so getting back into this, and on iOS, the certificate expires every 7 days, if I recall. Wow. I hadn't actually needed to do it, but yeah, I think you're right. which is dumb. There's a lot of dumb things that they do. Anyway, so what's really stood out is a lot of Epic's arguments actually have more to do with Google's regular business practices and less to do with the store behaviors. They've been leaning very heavily on the fact that Google auto deletes chat messages. This is basically true. One of the things that Google basically trains employees to do is put all of their messages into sort of a not privacy mode. I forget what they call it, but they basically put their chat services into a mode where they auto delete after 24 hours. And even if they're not in that mode, they auto delete after 30 days. So, they're already trying to just not have any records that could be used in a courtroom. And that's obviously what this is. Google's not being a particularly good faith company in this way. That being said, Epic has been trying way too hard to basically say, we can't win this case because we can't get at their private communications. And therefore you have to let us win this case because we're telling you, the jury, obviously we can't do anything to prove to you Google was acting in bad faith. It's a really interesting and wild argument to make, and basically fails on any legal grounds. If this were not a jury case, the judge would have thrown this out. Like, they would have slapped Google on the wrist for it, but they wouldn't have given Epic the time of day on that argument. Epic introduces the remove do no evil terms. Yeah. So yeah, this though is not the strongest argument for a case like this. Aside from that, Epic has also been, and you may remember I just made fun of the thing about, let's see, was it on this page? No. Let me quickly try to find this. Epic also made a big, I mentioned how back up, trying to say this again intelligently. Prosecutors in the other case that I was discussing earlier, the antitrust case, made it sound like switching your default search engine was like the most impossible thing in the world. Well, in the case of Epic versus Google, Epic's lawyers tried doing the exact same argument. So they came up with this graphic showing all the steps that it takes in order to download and install the Epic installer for Fortnite. Or, sorry, technically installing Fortnite directly, with air quote, installing Fortnite directly. Yeah. This includes, and I'm not kidding, I want to highlight this, visiting. Oh no, you have to visit the Epic Games page. That's one of the steps. And it shows literally every tap. Every screen you would have to go to. Not just every screen, but every tap. Case in point. Oops. And you know it was going to disappear if I did that. Case in point. Here is the allow from source. They've got two screenshots here. One with the switch toggled off. The other with the switch toggled on. They're serious with this stuff. They're literally trying to say that these are two separate steps. I love BS. But yeah, and here's the thing, I'll agree. I would be willing to agree it's more steps than it should be. But if you're going this far to overemphasize it, actually I didn't even look at all of these, but yeah, here's one where you have to tap the install button and then wait for it to install and then you can play. Like, seriously? Or how about logging into the Epic launcher? How much of this stuff would you have to do anyway? Like everything Epic is pushing for, it's all stuff you'd have to do anyway. It's these are bad arguments. This is bad faith, and I'm doubtful that a jury can look at this and genuinely say that they get that this is a bad faith argument. But I'd like to think that somebody there does. So these are the kinds of things I think Epic is kind of playing dirty pool. That said, you can look at everything Google has said in its defense in this case, and yeah, it really makes both companies look very bad. Google is very clearly trying to bury evidence. They're very clearly trying to play coy. They're pretending that things that they did competitively or anti-competitively were totally okay, and you know, none of it was unfair. The counter to that, and I don't know that I'd be able to find this, so I'll just have to tell it. The more you look through this, the more you also notice Google is calling out Epic repeatedly, and oh my god, a lot, for the fact that Epic is really just trying to, one, unseat Steam, and two, they're basically making bad faith arguments to try to tear down Google, Apple, and basically gain footing so that they can try to not compete with, but just replace Steam. So yeah, this has been like, it really shows that Epic is not approaching this lawsuit from the perspective that they felt wronged by Google. They're approaching this lawsuit from the perspective of, we see Google as one of the companies that we can use as a stepping stone for making our argument against other companies in the future. And yeah, they do want to muscle their way into owning a bigger part of the game space. The guy that they hired to even be part of, or to run the Epic Game Store, this guy was hired after he basically said that he thinks Epic's, or the success of Fortnite was significant enough that Epic is in that sort of same place as Counter-Strike, Half-Life, and kind of leading into Steam. Therefore, Epic would likely be in a position to sort of take over. This is literally something he said, which got him hired. And therefore, it's hard not to see that Epic is really, really just jockeying for position and probably doesn't care as much about any perceived wrongs. Diablo. The judge is a person who knows or tries understanding tech, right? No. I'm sure that the judge probably knows a little bit, but I doubt that the judge is going to get overly nitpicky about these things. Just the fact that Google purposely hiding information looks bad on them. Yeah, it does. Though likewise, one of the things that came up, and again, I don't remember if this was said a couple weeks ago or if it was said in just today's testimony, but somewhere in there was an email between some employees at Epic where one of the Epic employees actually said, this makes us look like the bad guys, doesn't it? Let's see if I just search for bad guy. Yeah, okay, here it is. Google says Epic knows it's the bad guy. Google's opening statement is done, but first it introduced these snippets of internal emails from Epic employees who apparently thought it's Project Liberty, that was the name Epic gave to putting its own billing system into the iOS and Android versions of Fortnite. But they thought its Project Liberty legal trap wasn't exactly on the level. Quote, just planting the nefarious seed now. Again, this is something that an Epic employee put in, or sent as an email to another. And then presumably somebody else, or maybe that first person, said, how do we not look like the bad guys? Question mark. I mean, everything we're attempting is technically a violation of Google's policy, right? Writes one employee. Yes, but that's not the question, answers another. I mean, they know. They know. This is one of those things like they could have started a lawsuit without intentionally breaking the terms of service first. This really proves that the intentional breaking of terms of service was a willful act to basically be a stunt. Now, whether or not you want to say that was a worthwhile or appropriate thing, that's a discussion for another time. Sorry, I'm trying to zap a fly that has been circling in here. Why are there flies? It's November. You gotta fight for your right to money. Yeah, I know, that's great. Anyway, yeah, so this court case is petty. It's really funny. It's not the most interesting thing to read through. I promise you, this is actually a pretty boring live blog that The Verge has going, and it's not their fault. It's a kind of boring case. But if you really are looking for something stupid to read through this. It really is just the most comically petty and unnecessary lawsuit. And don't get me wrong, I even think that it is something that should happen. I think that if this lawsuit goes the right way, it may lead to Google eventually being forced to adjust its prices and treat developers a little bit more responsibly. That said, this is it just reads as petty. This feels like two teenagers slap fighting each other. It's not, I don't think, going to lead to any particularly excellent outcome. It's not, I don't think, going to impress anyone with its legal decision. And we're probably not going to, I think what we're going to end up seeing is the jury, I imagine, is probably going to give Epic some very tiny reward, but not what they want. Which is kind of the same way things went with Apple. Apple ended up winning the case against Epic, essentially. There was some minor ruling in Epic's favor, if I remember correctly, but it wasn't a win. They lost effectively. They were happy with some of the outcome, but not enough. And I think that's how this is probably going to go too. The only catch is, if Google gets enough bad press, I could see that swaying the jury. And the fact that they currently have the antitrust trial going on one side and this trial with Epic on the other, I could see that maybe having an unexpected side effect in the resulting case. Austin, exactly. Apple didn't have a jury. This one does. It was entirely the judge deciding the case for Apple. And that was Google's fault. They actually had asked for, they initially agreed to a jury trial. It was proposed by Epic. Google agreed to it. And then later, Google turned around and said, "Oh, we actually don't want a jury trial." And they argued against it. The judge basically said, "Look, you already agreed to it. We're going to stick with this." And so, yeah, that was Google's mistake, or a mistake. And I think, Austin, you say that's what concerns you about this. I agree. I think the jury is a lot more of a roll of the dice. I don't think Google was making the right choice by rejecting or by accepting a jury trial. I think they would have been smarter if they just asked the judge to treat it on its own merits. Especially because I think pretty amusingly, Apple should not have won their trial. Just honestly, like, Apple made a very bad excuse, and Apple is the more closed of the two systems. Epic at least can push their product on Android without relying on Google at all. That is a thing. They can do it. It's not unrealistic. And here it is. Google is the one who stands an actual chance of losing because of a jury, not because of their arguments. That said, they're also making it really easy for Epic to basically call Google evil and bad and wrong and dishonest and all the other things. So I don't know. I that's the thing. If this were a different situation, I would say it's a no-brainer. Google should probably win this because Apple won a similar trial. But I don't think that's how it's going to go. I think in this scenario, really we're going to probably see. I think Epic is going to get a larger, closer to a win. I just don't think it's going to be an actual win. I think they're going to probably see Google forced to pay out some amount of money. They will declare it as a win, but ultimately it won't be a punishment to Google beyond here, pay a bill. And Google will be perfectly comfortable with that as long as they don't have to change anything else. Diablo. Google makes Fuchsia and this is all solved. Yeah. That would be neat. That would be hilarious. I'd love to see them pop out with Fuchsia and say, hey, yeah, sure, we'll open up the Android Play Store. Won't matter in 2 years because everything will be Fuchsia. So, cheers. Enjoy. I don't see it happening. And anyway, so yeah, that's that about sums it up. I know I saw a few other little details here and there, but for the most part, this case has just really not materialized a whole lot of value yet. And maybe I'll feel differently once I've read through a few more pages of it. Mostly stuff in the middle. I got most of today's announcement, or most of the details from today, and I got stuff from about a week and a half ago, or about a week and a half ago. But I have not caught up in the space between yet. So I'll try to get through the rest of this and actually have a little bit more to say about it, possibly next week, or maybe just in Discord. We'll see how it goes. But so goes my familiarity with this topic. I have also run out of topics as a whole. So, and made it almost 3 hours. It's not bad. Let's see. What are the plans for the coming week? As usual, should be game streaming this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Let's see. I don't even know when, but there's supposedly a review for the headphones that I'm wearing now. That will someday get posted. I don't know when, but it's done. It's out of my hands. Let's see. What else? As usual, RambleCast next week. I will find something to stream about. The reality is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of news, and it's probably going to be a relatively dead week because nobody ever announces stuff just before Thanksgiving. There's not much to talk about. I just realized. Wait, hold on. Let me look. I need to see what date a certain thing is supposed to happen that I can't talk about. Let's see. What is the... Yeah, that's the day I thought it was. Wow. Okay, so next week I will have a thing that, believe it or not, there's something announcing next week, and I have it here. I will talk about it on stream next week. Anyway, what brand are the headphones? The headphones are made by Shure. That is Shure, which I know, not the most common brand, or not the name most people know. Shure is historically known for recording equipment, so they make a lot of microphones. The Shure SM7B, and be aware, I can rattle that model number or model name off that easily. The Shure SM7B is famously like the microphone you see everywhere. You see like the podium that like presidents are speaking into. 3/4 of the microphones there are Shure SM7Bs. That's how widely like significant this company is for it. Anyway, the headphones I'm wearing are the Aonic 50 Gen 2. And they're not the prettiest. I mean, they're just all black. There's no real there's zero accent colors to it. There's no particular like design flair. Like the only real design flair this has is a single sided metal yoke that goes behind the ear. Otherwise, the cool thing about them though is, unlike almost any headphones out there, these are the most portable you can possibly imagine. They have they connect by wired wired 2.5 millimeter aux cable, a USB-C cable, so you can go with either one of those, or you can connect them over Bluetooth. And they support every Bluetooth codec that is in any kind of use at all, with the exception of LC3 and LC3 Plus. That's it. They cover everything. Diablo, yes, these are the same ones that I was editing photos for on Monday. Had to think about that. Yeah. I did the photo edit stream on these headphones, and they're not my favorite photos. They came out okay. I would have liked to do some different things, but I just could not find places that I liked for shooting them. But yeah, they're really good headphones. I will say that they're a little bit studio sound out of the box, but if you're using them with either USB-C or Bluetooth, you can configure their sound profile. And the Shure app has a really good EQ in it, and it makes a world of difference. It makes a huge difference, and they're really, really good headphones. And you can, if you want, you can almost tune them to be like super deep U-curve headphones like Beats are, or you can tune them to be really neutral and basically use them as studio headphones, and it's a good combo. And it's a good thing that I've decided now to kind of wrap up the stream, because my cat has decided to come in and take her spot on the desk. This has been a thing lately. She likes to sleep on my desk. She is such a cutie. She's so sweet. Yeah, you little goofball. I don't know if the mic picks up the purring, but yeah, you're a cutie. Aww. She loves the attention. You're a little attention hound. Okay. Now you can get back up there. So anyway, yeah, she totally has just decided that my desk is a place she needs to occupy. Wow, Diablo and Carson always have the emojis. And no, you can't I'm not letting you walk onto the laptop. You're already on the desk. You don't get to be on the laptop. Goofball. Anyway, so trying to think if there was anything else. Yeah, anyway, the thing I can't talk about that is completely unrelated to the headphones, just to clarify. The thing I can't talk about will be known sometime in a few days. I guess technically I shouldn't give the actual embargo date. I don't think that matters, but technically, whatever. Has she ever damaged any of my tech? Carson, I couldn't technically tell you who it is, but I would just say DJI is not the only company out there. There are other companies that send stuff out. Anyway, so has she ever damaged any tech? Trying to think if she's actually been responsible for any real damage or not. I know I don't think she's ever actually damaged anything. She's put like maybe a couple of small scratches on things. She's like just knocking them over and they hit something or whatever. I don't think she's done any like destructive damage though. Nothing that would actually matter. She has not scratched the Pixel Watch 2 yet. And by the way, just to throw this in, mine is still completely flawless, scratch free, no sign of any damage. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can see maybe I need to wipe off a fingerprint, but aside from that, like, yeah, this surface is absolutely flawless. So, yeah, I can't help but think that one girl, the reviewer, was it The Verge? She suggested that she had a metal bed frame and that could have scratched it. I guarantee that's what it was. That's the only explanation that makes sense. Kat, no, you can't get on the laptop. She's insistent. Yeah, goofball. I'm just gonna hold you here till I wrap up. Anyway, what was I gonna say? I don't remember. Anyway, I'm just gonna call that a good stopping point before I accidentally do say anything about the upcoming product announcement. But I will say, I will quickly say though, who the hell announces a product within a week of within a week of Thanksgiving? I mean, that's just daring. That's just, well, I guess. Oh no, actually, I can think of something I can say to that aspect, but I can't say it now. Anyway, so yeah, but anyway, let's see. So for those who don't already know, especially if you're watching later, if you'd like to support the channel, there are links down below to Streamlabs, Cash App, and Patreon. It definitely does help out. By all means, feel free to click on those, play around with them, consider donating something. It really does help. And huge thanks to Diablo, Carson, Austin, David, and Curvy for being contributors to the channel. It is you people are awesome. You have beautiful faces. Let's see, I will be back this weekend for some game streams. You'll of course see a very, I expect, very bloated movie post over the next come Friday, and then I will also probably be posting an update on Wednesday or Thursday, I forget which, of next week. And yes, I will announce as best as I can, plans for the RambleCast next week in advance. If by some chance it's like maybe not going to happen on the regular schedule, or maybe if I figure out something else to do with it, if that makes sense, then I'll try to make sure everyone knows. Anyway, with that, thank you all for coming by, hanging out, being part of the conversation, chatting with me, and keeping me chatting. Oh, how did I not switch views? Man, sorry about that. This whole time you've been getting a tiny look at the kitty. How dare me? Yeah, now you're like, I don't want to be up here. I wanted to be on your lap or on the laptop. What are you doing? Yeah, super cute. Anyway, so with that, I hope you all an excellent rest of your week. Now you're gonna wrestle with me. Sorry, as I'm looking to find the outro card, and she's in the way of the monitor again. So I hope you all an excellent rest of your week, and good night, everybody. Weird, I hit the button to transition, but I wonder if I must have accidentally hit it on the way back. Anyway, well, with that, since she probably is responsible, she's gonna say good night, everyone. Good night, everybody. All right, it's time for real. Good night.